And then like we'd play all the hall shows in New Jersey, and like we'd always feel like we didn't really fit in.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was the Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Plan A Project were a punk band from northern New Jersey. They started in 95 with bassist/vocalist Danny DeSimone, I'm awful with last names, guitarist vocalist Dennis DeGraw, and drummer Keith Weiland, possessing an uncanny amount of energy, desire, and spirit that demanded respect. In the duration, 3 EPs were released and 2 studio albums on Go-Kart Records. So Dennis heard of the podcast from a buddy of his at a show, and he emailed me to catch up. And he said, "Hey, I've heard that my name has been mentioned a few times. That's pretty awesome." And I said, "Yeah, you should probably be on the podcast for me to fucking interview you." And he was like, "Okay, that sounds kind of great." So I ended up getting Dennis on the phone, and this is what we talked about: stealing wood from around town to build a half pipe, going to shows to learn how to play guitar, the back cover of Dookie, coming up with a band name on the fly to get on a show, the Westwood Garage in New Jersey, creating their own merch, the band Against All Authority, what New York City scene was like, sleeping in a walk-in freezer. This is an amazing story. Go-Kart Records, the tour with the Buzzcocks, and a ton more. Now, I mentioned earlier this week that there was going to be a surprise, and here it is. So while setting up this interview through emailing each other back and forth, Dennis sent me a song and said this: "When we decided to call it a day, we went in and made sure we recorded something as we envisioned. Something we wish made it out there sooner rather than never. With that, the lyrics pretty much sum up what being a member of Plan A was about. I thought I'd share since the song has never been heard outside of very close friends." So I immediately replied and said, "Dude, you should get this on Bandcamp. I will help you do it, but these songs need to get out there." And luckily, he had more songs and decided that I was a genius. I'm just kidding. And he took my advice, and now these unreleased songs are available online. So you can do one of two things. You can go to planaproject.bandcamp.com, or you can just click on the link in the show notes. And I'll probably add this link to the Facebook post that I do when I launch this. So you should go check them out. The songs are badass, and I think that everyone out there who's a Plan A fan will love them. And I think that the people who have never heard of Plan A but have found this podcast, they should go check these out as well. Check out the new merch on thiswasthescene.com, and thank you again to all the people who have donated to the podcast and who are Patreons. You are fantastically great. If you haven't donated or signed up for the Patreon, just go to thiswasthescene.com, and there are the buttons at the very top of the page. And that just helps keep this thing going since, yeah. Also, if you'd like to be a sponsor, let me know. This could be a company that's in New Jersey, or you think a punk crowd would dig your product, or you could just be a band promoting a show that's coming up and you want to get more people there, or you could be a merch person who wants to get people to buy your merch. I don't know. If you want to fucking sponsor it, just email thiswasthescene@gmail.com and let me know. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. It's been a fucking minute.
Yeah,
Since we've
it's been a
seen each
long
other.
time. Someone
Yeah.
brought it up the other day. I told them that we were doing this like podcast, and they brought up that show that we played like in Montvale with like the Broadways and Thursday
Yeah,
at a pool.
the pool party, or that pool party. Holy shit. Wow.
Yeah,
I actually forgot that you guys played that, Bill.
yeah, we were there.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, that and 20 other bands, because that's what it always was.
I think we were like a last minute add on. It was like one of those things that like I don't remember even much about it. Yeah.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah.
there's have you been to the NJPP archive that Joe Polito put together?
I have a little bit, but I haven't really navigated around on it.
He has
But
he has section where he scanned all these flyers. So anytime that show I've talked about multiple times.
oh
But
really?
oh yeah, because I talked to Brendan from Slapstick and we talked about the Broadway show there. And I was like, "Yeah, do you remember the show?" And I've talked about it in other interviews. So the funny thing is, like, every time I talk about a show, I always go to the NJPP and look up the flyer to see, you know, just to see the flyer from the show, because most
Yeah,
likely
yeah.
he has it. So I'm actually doing that
Pull
right
it.
now to see it.
Yeah, pull it up to see it's there. Should be on there.
I forget what fucking year that was. Was that 98? 90.
Yeah, I was gonna say 90. Actually, it was probably 97 summer, maybe 97, 98
Let me
in
see.
summer.
Actually, it's funny. As soon as I went to 90, I clicked on 98, and as soon as I click on it, right in the top, it's Plan A. It's not that show, but
Yeah.
it's oh my God, it is that show. Holy shit! Wait, the Montvale Swim Club, Plan A,
Yeah.
Jerkoffs, Lane Meyer, After the Fact, Scratch Kid. Yeah, but we also had Broadways and Tuesday play that show.
I think they were add-on though. I remember add-on being there. It was either like I thought it was maybe us, but it was like uh it was probably the Broadways were probably add-ons to that.
Yeah,
Because there was like
yeah,
25 people there, man. They would have brought like more people than that to that show.
I know, because
You
no,
know?
you guys are the headliners because you're on top of the flyer.
Yeah. No, I totally remember the show, but I remember
Wow.
there's an add-on, so it must have been like those guys.
Yeah, because they were hanging out in Jersey at I believe Sean's house, Lane Meyer Sean. They were hanging with him, and so I think they that was the last show of that whole week, and that was yeah,
Yeah, they
there was
probably
like
just
nobody
thrown
there.
on.
Yeah, there was like nobody there.
Yeah.
Holy shit! So what have you been up to these years? I see you're an artist and you've got poetry and all this stuff on your website.
Yeah, it kind of just like took being in a band and just like took momentum back into art. That's where I started. So like it's the same thing as being in a band, except you don't have to call people and be like, "Hey, want to practice? Hey, you want to do this show? Hey, you want to do this?" It's kind of like it's the same concept though. It's
Yeah.
like same environment.
Well, you're making shit, but you don't have to rely on anybody else to do it with you, so you can get it done
Yeah,
faster.
yeah, exactly.
You don't have to
'Cause
rely
that
on
seems to
anybody.
be the biggest like pitfall of any band is trying to like organize, like especially as you get older, trying to organize anything with anyone that's got stuff going on. It's just almost impossible. It
Oh, fuck yeah.
seems.
Yeah, I've tried many
And
business partnerships after, like, Lanemeyer was the first business partnership I had, not realizing it.
yeah,
And then
yeah, yeah,
I think I've had about 6 or 7 different business partnerships through my 20s into, like, right in my early 30s. And then I was like, fuck this shit. I'm not teaming up with people anymore, which is kind of, I think now I'd be able to communicate better and potentially have it work out because I've talked to this other interviews where it's stating where you want to go and then how the fuck you're going to get there and is everyone else on the same page? And if they're not, then fuck it. But
yeah. Well, you can communicate as grandiose as you want, but like how many other people like are gonna reciprocate? It's kind
yeah,
of like a hard match.
yeah, and so because it's trying to get someone to see the same thing that's in your head, it's kind of an impossible task, unless they just want to follow you along. But
Yeah,
I see.
totally.
So you're in Brooklyn now?
Yeah, I've been down there since like 2009. I think I moved down there.
Oh wow. Is the fucking L actually going to close, or is that a myth?
Nah, they're keeping that open.
Oh
That
wow.
doesn't really affect me. I don't like hang out in that part of Brooklyn.
Yeah. Yeah. See on the map, you're like quite south of Williamsburg, where all the hipsters. Are there still hipsters there? Is that still a thing?
Like Bushwick. Bushwick.
Bushwick.
They moved over. I used to live in Bushwick when I first moved over there, and I just had to get out of there quick.
Okay.
Too much of the scene, man.
Ah.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I'll jump into this. And anyone listening, since the majority of people listening to this are from New Jersey, even though it is starting to spread a lot further out, but if I look at my statistics, it's like Jersey is just like the red spot. And everyone who grew up in that scene fucking knows Plan A Project, or I just call you guys Plan A. And
Yeah.
so fucking you guys you were mentioned in a bunch of interviews, and I was like, fuck, how am I gonna reach out? And then luckily we connected because you had someone had told you were at the Jawbreaker show, you said, and someone mentioned it.
Yeah. So I was like at Jawbreaker, and like a friend of mine was like, "Hey, man," same thing. He said, "Hey, like you guys, like you ever hear this podcast? Like, this was a scene." I was like, "Nah, man, never heard of it." He was like, "Hey, like your name keeps coming up on it. You should contact this guy. I'm sure he wants to do an interview with you." And I was like, "All right."
Yeah, like typically, I mean, I've had people reach out to me before and they're like, "Hey, we're this band." I'm like, I don't even, who the fuck are you? And they're like from like the late 2000s or something.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, I'm like, "Hey, I'm sure you guys are great. I just wouldn't fit the mix." And so it was like, I love it when a situation happens where because I'm asking people or like, I try to not make it broadcast because I always liked every episode to be a surprise.
yeah,
And so it was just like I'm like I literally think I was thinking that day or the day before I'm like fuck how am I gonna find him, and then you emailed, you're like, hey dude, love the podcast, I heard Plan A. I was like, yeah, we gotta set this up.
yeah,
We gotta talk
totally.
about it. um cool, man. So yeah, so I mean, like any episode, all the episodes, I just kind of like want to kind of in give the people the whole origin story, go back to when you were very young and talk about that and lead it up to when you guys dispersed and what led you to where you are now, and really focus on the late 90s and right as it just kind of rolls over into 2000, and talk about that. But we're going to cover like New Jersey, and you had some stuff you had mentioned about like go-kart and things I want to go over. So just to start it off, I want to go way back to when you were
All
a,
right.
a wee a wee kid, and what got you passionate into about music.
I think it was something that was always there, whether I knew it or not. I remember actually, as a kid, I was given a Fisher Price, one of those plastic like record players. And, the first record I remember getting was like, I was given Ray Charles,
Okay.
and like, I remember just looking at the album cover and it was just so like, it just mesmerized me. And then I remember like listening to like What I Say, and like 30 seconds in, there's like a piano break. And I was like, oh man, that's really cool. It sounds like Charlie Brown. It's like,
Schroeder.
I'm serious. Like, if you listen to that song, like 30 seconds in, there's like a piano break in it. It's very similar to like the Peanuts
Yeah.
intro. Like 30 seconds into that, there's like a piano break. And I was like, for some reason, I just connected the two as a young kid. I was like, this is cool. And it was like, that. And then from there, it's like, my mom was always listening to Everly Brothers and like all kinds of stuff like that early on. Like, that's what but the thing that really caught me was when I was real young too, is like, I remember I would be at my grandmother's house in like Blondie would come on,
Yeah.
like Tide is High. And I used to have a chair in front of the radio. And like, as soon as that song, like the radio, it was all over the radio at that time, like, and I remember I'd just come, whatever part of the house I was in, I would run to the radio and I have this chair sitting in front of it. And I would just listen to like The Tide is High. It was like the song, like that was my thing. And then like shortly after, like I remember seeing like, Combat Rock the Casbah on like,
MTV.
video. And and just, well, actually at that time it was HBO Jukebox
What?
going way back.
Holy
Yeah.
shit, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, I just remember being a kid and being like, thought Joe Strummer was like the coolest thing, man. And like right away, as soon as I heard that song, I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Like I was
Yeah.
just like way like just so taken by it, like.
I was always freaked
And
out
then
by the armadillo in that video. I was always like, what the fuck is that thing?
yeah, and I'd be freaked out with the guy standing on the mountain. I was like, what's up with the hymn? Like
Yeah.
I couldn't put, because I didn't put it all together. I was like, I didn't know what the song was about or like how much impact it really, like the lyrics really have. And
Yeah.
like I was like, oh, what's up? Yeah, same thing. But yeah,
That's actually a couple of things. I've heard a lot of bands. I just did an interview recently with someone, and they had mentioned that they were younger. Their mom and dad would play music in the house, and I think everyone I've talked to has said that. And that's the same thing with me. Like my parents, my mom would play the radio all the time, even when we were eating dinner. Like she'd come home from work and put the radio on. It would be on all the time. And I just think that's like a funny thing that I never like would talk to my friends about that back in the day. Like I never would say, "Oh
Yeah,
yeah, do your parents play music?" But now it's just like it seems like all of our fucking parents or anyone I've interviewed, like they all would just crank music all the time.
yeah, and as a kid to get like Ray Charles as your first record is just weird, like
Yeah. Actually, and then just the fact that you like it's like I try to watch little kids like if I'm at like my sister's house or like my friends if they have kids, it's like they're kind of playing around. Everyone dismisses them, but all the shit that we remember from being really little, I'm not gonna go off on this tangent, but like all the shit we remember from being little, like it was so significant to us. But as adults, they're looking at you like, yeah, they just sit in front of a radio. They know. But like your mind is like exploding right now at that moment. You're like, what the? I have to be here. I have to listen to this. And your parents are like,
yeah,
yeah, they just didn't. Yeah, I don't know. They just kind of do that, and you're like, no, it's like they're developing in front of you this passion for music, and you're just like, yeah, whatever.
yeah, it was totally like my mom had those 8 tracks, and I used
Yeah.
to like, yeah, get into all that stuff, but yeah, and as I got a little older, like when I was like, let's see, I think I was 12 or 13. They were building like a business down the street from where I lived, and like I rounded up all the guys, like all the kids in the neighborhood one night, and I was like, "We're going to build a ramp," and like, so we went and stole all the plywood and like lumber and everything. We went back to like my house and we built this half pipe, and
You did a half pipe or a ramp?
no, it was a half pipe, man,
Jesus
and it was
Christ.
actually something that like it was there from like pretty much my whole childhood from 13 all the way up through high school. It was like the ramp, and that's why I brought it up is because that's where everybody in the town would come and ride this ramp growing up. And like I just remember like someone brought 7 seconds,
Oh wow.
walk together, rock together, and that's actually where like punk rock started for me.
Okay.
Like hearing that album, that's like the guy actually who brought that album that like is the guy who introduced me to Dan in
Okay.
Plan A,
Yeah.
the bass player. So
Yep.
like yeah, so that's how all kind of just came about, With
What
7 seconds came Minor Threat, and that was it. It
what
was hooked,
what town did you grow up in?
Sussex County.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which were you in Sparta, Vernon?
No, we were like Wantage.
Wantage. All right.
Yeah, which is on just just past Vernon. It's the next town over.
Yeah, I grew up in Jefferson. We always would go up to Vernon or like Wallkill and all that, and play
Yeah,
like
yeah.
soccer games out there. I was like, this is so far. There's it's the middle of fucking nowhere.
It is, man. It's like total country.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
what were you guys playing the music on? Was it just like a boombox? Did they have a tape, 7 seconds tape?
Yeah. We'd plug
Wow.
in at the boombox and we just like play it.
So like so at this time, like you get it, like you're starting to listen to this. At what point did that transition you into like wanting to play music and then like starting a band?
I think that came with like around the same time my uncle took me to he worked for New Jersey Transit. He took me on the train to Hoboken, and I used to remember like going up, this guy was selling like tapes at a table, and I remember going up and I saw the Ramones Animal Boy, and I was like, ah, and I ended up like swiping the tape, and once I heard that, I was like, ah, I could play guitar. Like it just kind of like connected, like the energy was like there, like it just resonated with me,
Yeah.
and at the same time, it made me realize that like, oh, like yeah, you don't have to be like a ripper on a guitar. Like it's about like wanting to do it, and like I think it was just one of those things. I was like, yeah, I want to play guitar, and it was after I got that tape.
So how old were you again when this happened?
Then I would say I was like 15, maybe 16, 15.
Okay. So how soon
And
after that
then
did you actually get a guitar?
I would say right when I was like 16 going into 17.
Okay. And did you take
Yeah, because I
lessons
had,
or?
Nah, I never. I would go to shows and just watch people.
No shit.
It was like, yeah, I would just like go home and play songs. Like I would sit right up front and I would just like watch people play, like watch, and just that's how I figured out everything. I would just watch instead of going to shows and like being like more of a spectator. I was there to like educate myself on how to play guitar.
Really? That's interesting. So you'd be in the front row or like close to it, just like staring at the guitar player's hands, just like figuring out what the fuck they were doing.
Yeah, yeah. No, just go home and like figure it out. Never took a lesson. Never. It probably shows up, but at the same time, it made it interesting. It's easier to learn when you're like studying than you are like someone telling you what to do. You know?
Did you ever talk to someone at a show and say, "Hey, real quick, like, what's this? Like, I see your fingers are staying in like the same position through the neck. Like, what is that? Like, because that's the basic punk chord."
No, I don't think I ever like was that guy to like ask a lot of questions. It was just kind of like not my. I think I was just socially awkward, just like kind of didn't know how to make that like transition into like ask someone, and it comes with like maybe being a little hard headed too.
Okay.
I can figure this out. I don't need that guy to tell me like that kind of shit.
Where was?
Ego,
Yeah, like
ego
fuck that
running
guy.
wild.
Where was your first show that you went to? Like, do you remember the hall or was it where was it?
So like, yeah, I remember. So the first show I went to was this band called Descent, and they are from like Colorado. They were on tour, and I remember like me and a bunch of my friends like rode like a half hour up into New York State in the middle of nowhere, like in the back of a pickup truck. And yeah, so this band Descent was like they kind of have a sound like Dead Kennedys.
Okay.
That's like, and I remember just like watching that, and they were like, it's a basic punk show, like at a small club. And I just remember like, oh yeah, this is like just being into it, really into the rawness, the authenticity of it, and just being like, yeah, man, this is like cool. And then they played right after some metal band came on. The guys were like headbanging and stuff, and I was like, get the fuck out of here, man. This makes no sense to me. Like this, yeah.
Yeah, like this is not mesh. This is not
Nah,
cool all together
nah,
right
this,
now.
nah, this is not me, man. You can keep the long hair and like, I'll never have long hair. Just because like I knew everyone in my family's bald, so like there's no possibility of that.
You don't get your hopes up for the future.
Yeah, exactly.
What so you're going to shows, you've got a guitar, you're learning learning it on your own. Like so this whole time you're obviously doing this because you're thinking like I'm gonna have a fucking band one day.
No, I don't think so. I think I was just like wanted to learn guitar. Like I really like the energy of it. Just really like brought something to me, and like going back to like 7 seconds, like it really just like there was just this rawness with this distortion on the guitar, and just like it just grabbed me, and that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to like be able to do that myself, and it wasn't even an idea to start a band until someone was like, hey, let's jam.
Yeah,
And
so
I
tell
was
me
like,
about
yeah.
that. Yeah, so how did that transition where someone found out that you were playing and then through conversation or whatever and said and then that happens?
Well, the guy who brought the 7 seconds, this guy Jay Jelen, um, he came to me. He's like, hey, I know this guy and this drummer down in Kinnelon. We should go like jam with him. And it actually ended up being, this is like when I was ninth or 10th grade in high school. And it actually was Dan from Plan A.
Okay.
So like we went down there and jammed with him, and like I think we played like 2 or 3 times, and it was just transportation, all that. I was like a half hour away from my house, and at that age, like trying to get a band together, like that wasn't like someone down the street was just not going to happen, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
what year was this?
I'm going to say, man, that was probably like maybe 90, 90.
90?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to shows back then. What obviously that was a big difference between 90 and like 96 on,
Yeah.
where it was still happening, but it was not as in front of your face, because it's like what 95, 96 is where like people start hearing about NoFX, Green Day. Actually, was it Green Day?
Yeah.
Was that 90? Was that 95 or was that earlier than that when they came out with Dookie?
It was earlier because like I actually went to see Green Day on the first tour. This is a kind of funny story is that at that time too, like I was like 91, I was going to like ABC No Rio and seeing shows and stuff. And I remember going there to see Green Day, and they pulled up, right? And they like looking out the window, they stepped out on the street and they got back in the car and drove away.
Like,
They never played, man.
no shit.
Yeah, man, they came to ABC. They stepped on the street, looked around, and like they had like what looked like I don't know, it was like a bus or like a bookmobile or some weird looking like thing, and they would like they stepped out on the street and they like yeah they were there and then they were gone and they never played. They
That
never played, man.
that's weird.
Yeah, so that
Like,
was earlier. I think that was like, and this is another interesting thing. Like I think that was actually '93
okay. Yeah, because I actually just
because
looked. I looked up Dookie when it came out February 1st, 94.
'94.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
beginning.
actually you got that cover pulled up, that Green Day cover,
Yeah.
Dookie.
Yep.
If you look at the back cover, I'm on the back cover of Dookie.
I heard about Dookie because we were in high school, and I've told the story a couple times. So a friend, one of these guys came in. One of the guys from who was a grade above us had told the story to different people, and it got around to me and my friends that him and his friend, they were both there in the front row. Steve Raguso, he was in a Six Felter Place, and it was
Okay.
him. Yeah, it was him and his friend, and their heads are at the very front. And then Brian Malloy, who did uh, Just in Time for Nothing, the zine, he's the guy holding the Ernie doll.
Yeah, if you look at that guy right to the left, there's a like my face is turning to the right, or actually be on the left if you're looking at it.
Wait, let me look at this.
That's me. Yeah. That was like at Roseland, like they opened up for Bad Religion.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's crazy. Wait, so you're the head that's like almost like off of the CD cover or the
Not
back of it?
now. It's like you see, like your friend with the Ernie doll, right? He's the blonde hair guy. That's
Uh,
kind of look like standing behind the girl with like the right
yes,
to the left
yes,
of
yes,
that
yes.
girl. There's a guy like turning to the right.
Oh my God, that's yeah, the short black
Yeah,
hair.
yeah.
I
That's it.
think I think I'm eventually gonna end up knowing everybody in this photo. Like next up, I'll probably be like the girl in the bottom left corner. It's just her eye. It's like
Yeah,
I'll end up
yeah.
just tripping. I'll be like, oh, she's like, I'm on the cover. Be like, okay, I'm just
It's
gonna
just
like,
one of those random things that just like is just funny. Actually, it's like
yeah.
it's kind of like weird.
Well,
Yeah,
they had to take the they actually photoshopped Ernie out in later versions because Sesame Street or Jim Henson or something, they were gonna
yeah.
sue them. So they were like, you gonna
I
give us
heard that.
royalties about that. All right, so like when you guys got together and played, how long was it until you played your first show?
Yeah. So actually, like we first practice was New Year's Day on 1995. So like
Oh
I
wow.
reconnected with Dan snowboarding like a few days earlier. We ran into each other on the mountain and kind of just looked at each other and was like, "Hey, let's play." And like I think it was like 2 or 3 days later, we were like practicing, and then we like did like that week we did like 3 practices and we had like 3 songs. So we were like, "Hey, man, let's like try to book a show." We didn't even have a name or anything.
Nice.
And at the same time, like Dan and I kind of frequented ABC No Rio in New York City, so we were like, "Yeah, let's call there. Like we have connections there. Let's like try to book something." And one, we thought it was a long shot, and two, yeah, we were just like thinking it would be like way out, it wouldn't be something that would happen right away. So like, yeah, so we called there and they're like, hey, yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, you guys are cool. Yeah. What's the name of the band? And we were like, hold on. And just like at that time, the drummer Keith was just like sitting there and we were like, dude, they want to know the name of the band. And like, we were like looking at each other and Keith was like, just call it Plan A, man. And I'm like, no, man. Just call it like we gotta add something. That's too generic. Just put Plan A Project. So Dan was like, all right. Like Dan's on the phone. At that time, 95, like we didn't have cell phones or anything. So we're on like landline.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, so it's Plan A Project. We're like, so when are we gonna play? And they're like, yeah, so you could play the 13th of February. So it was like February 13th,
Wow.
1995.
That's wild.
We opened for the Pissed in a band called the Scabs at ABC Naria.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Did you guys write any more songs before the show, or did you keep the to three and just let the
No,
audience want more?
we had 7 songs
What
by
was
the
like
time that.
what was like the max length you typically would write your songs? It's
What do you
kind of
mean?
it's a random question, but typical
Like
punk
time
song.
wise?
Yeah, typical punk songs back then were like a minute and a half. Unless you're Lifetime, they were like 20 seconds long. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm trying to think. You guys are gonna play this show. You've got 3 songs that could potentially, plus talking and tuning and crap, that could fill up maybe 10 minutes. So if you have 7 songs, you can kind of get up to 20 if they're, but they're like minute, 3 minutes long. Like, did you have longer songs or were they just like to the point and
No, just
done?
standard, man. Like 2 or 3 minutes at the most. Maybe some even shorter than that, I'm sure, like between a minute and a half. And there was one that was close to 3 that we was probably one of the first songs that we wrote.
Hmm.
So like yeah, it was just basic like timing on that. We didn't think about like how to make shorter or longer songs.
What was the name of the first song you wrote?
Plan A.
Oh, was it?
The thing with like the band, like we just like shot out of the rocket like immediately.
Yeah.
And it was like right from the get-go there was no slowing down. Like we for 8 years, man, it was just on. There was never a break. There was never a break in that time. It was just on and on. And it was just started right from the first like practice. That's how it was. It was just like, yeah.
It just went. It just took off.
Yeah, we just so it was like two weeks. I think maybe no, it was a week after that show. Actually, the guy who told me about this podcast, he was at the first show. He was doing a show in like Springfield, Massachusetts. So the next day, like the next week, we were driving to Massachusetts. He was like, "Hey, dude, I'd love to have you guys like play." That's how it was. We didn't start locally. We were just like, boom.
Okay, so usually like the progression of bands is play a couple shows, you're driving your shit there in your cars, and then you buy a shit van, and then you get a kind of a better van if you want to go on tour. So at this point right here, and I'm also looking on the NJ Archives, the SoundCloud. He has all your albums up there. I think all of
Oh,
them.
really?
Yeah,
I
they're up
gotta give
there.
that a listen, man, because I don't think I have them.
Yeah, actually, I'll email you the thing
Yeah.
right now. Hold on one sec. Um, All right, I just emailed to you. Yeah, so there's the one thing that stood out to me is the because you guys have, I think it's a 7-inch here. Use Your Head. Is that a 7-inch you guys put out, or is that a
Yeah,
cassette?
that's so you remember the Westwood Garage?
Yep.
Westwood? Yeah, so like uh Chris from Heckle, he ran that.
Yeah.
That was his uncle's garage. And one of the bands, I think they're still around, is Rest Assured.
Looks
Uh
familiar.
like a hardcore type of band. And Jay, who was the singer of that band, was running a small label called Roadshow 13. At that same time, we were playing there, it seemed like every week. We were playing that garage. And that garage, like so many great bands came there. It was like Strike Anywhere, AFI,
Yeah. Wow.
like all those bands played that place. So like we were just like making connections and playing. And like Jay from, yeah, that band Rest Assured is the one who put that out.
Okay.
And reference the 7 seconds, use your head. That
Okay.
was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
So who came up with the logo? Because the logo to me was like your logo that you guys carried that carried with you for like I thought the entirety of the band.
We kind of just like we did everything ourselves. We screen printed our own shirts. Like we kept it. Actually, the 10-inch Youth Explosion before that came out like properly. We screen printed the all the covers to that
Oh wow.
ourselves. Like it was just kind of a DIY. Like I said, man, we didn't stop. It was just one of those things that we took pride in, like keeping it real and doing it ourselves. And we also saw that like we had money. It was like we weren't spending a lot of money on like having stuff done for us. Like
Yeah.
we talked to bands and we would be like we actually had money, and like compared to other bands, I wouldn't say we had money, but at that time, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
It
you could
wasn't like
actually get
we'd be
shit.
like, yeah, it wasn't like we'd be like, oh, how, like, I hope we get paid today because we got to go like this much in gas and tolls and all that crap.
Well, a lot of bands didn't know how to do this stuff. So like when you guys are screen printing this, who was doing the design work? Was that you? Because you still
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I pretty much did all those hand drawing things. I mean,
So you did the logo.
yeah,
Okay.
the logo.
So I mean that was like that was such a benefit because a lot of bands like I mean I'm a graphic designer now. I've been doing that for like shit 16 years or something like that. And yes, about 15 years. But I didn't know how to do this stuff back then, so we had to rely on other people, and that's where you'd have to spend money or like get a favor, but you'd have to have someone do it for you. But the fact that you got to do this stuff, and you're like, okay, well, we need shirts. Like, let us figure out how to make the shirts, or let me draw this shit. So I mean, if you have that all in your control, you can get stuff done so much faster without having to like rely on anybody.
Yeah, and that's part of that comes from playing ABC a lot. Like that was like our home base, really.
Hmm.
And we played there. It seemed like every month, maybe twice a month, we were playing there the first few years. And it just goes back to like I remember playing with like 15,
Oh wow.
and they were screen printing your own shirts in the parking lot, and it just kind of felt like it was like we respected those guys. As Crimp Shrine, all that stuff was like heavy.
Yeah.
The first thing I ever really learned on guitar was like in my mind. It's like I kind of respected their way they were doing things. So that's kind of just evolved into our band.
So how did it have, so you guys started playing these shows and then there's a build up to making shirts and stickers and album covers and like the logo and stuff, but like what was when you started doing all this because you didn't have that planned out as a kid that you wanted to do this and all of a sudden it was just presented to you. Was there a moment where you guys got together and said, "Hey, like let's just do this. Like, let's just do this. Let's see if we can really make something of it." Or if it was, this is, we have school or we're going to college or we want to go to college, whatever it was, and we'll just do this parallel to that. Or you're like, fuck everything else. This is what we want to do.
I no, I think it was like we didn't even think about it. Dan and I shared the same ethics, man. It was like in a lot of ways, and it was just one of those things that we'd think about doing it ourselves first before like it was like, all right, let's figure this out. Can we do this ourselves, or do we need to get someone else to do it? And we just found that like things got done if we did it ourselves, or and it may have not have been like perfect, but it brought a sense of pride in what we were doing and like kind of like authenticity about it. It was just like everything we did, we wanted to be like raw form ourselves. We didn't want it to be like a jacked up fabricated thing. And that could have been a benefit of the band maybe, and that's kind of just how we were,
But did you
our
want to,
mindset.
but did you guys like have a conversation of let's just do the band and like let's just see if we could just do this all the time? Or it literally was, just take it a week at a time?
No, we just actually we never really like we were working and doing what Dan was in school. Like we just did it, man. It just made everything happen.
Hmm.
Like I remember like we would do crazy stuff too. Like we get an offer to play like Atlanta for like somebody, Les and Jake or something, like ask us to play, and like we drive 16 hours to play, man. And we did this all the time, man. We just made it happen. Like, all right. And I remember pulling up to work because I have to be to work maybe Monday morning or something, and pulling up like just as I need to be to work, like without any sleep, like drive right through the fucking night and just be like, go work this shitty job, and just like to make things happen.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, it's like a crazy experience.
How long were you guys together before you went on your first tour?
I don't even remember now that.
Yeah.
Let's see. End of summer of 95.
Do you remember where you went or like how long it was?
Yeah, so we went to like out to Chicago and we played like Madison. It was probably like a Midwest type, North Midwest tour. And we came back. And then shortly thereafter, we went down. Because in this time, too, we met up with that band, Against All Authority.
Yeah. Oh my God, I forgot about them.
So, like, you know, they were like a huge impact on us as a band. They're the one, Records of Rebellion, which the second 7-inch and the 10-inch came out on. That was Against All Authority. So,
Okay.
like, that label, Records of Rebellion, was really that band, Against All Authority. Danny, the singer, yeah, that's
Yeah.
his label.
I remember associating you guys. There was always bands out there that I would always see them as like they were kind of a group. Well, not a group, but they were just buddies, right? So I just My Pal Trigger, their interviews launching tomorrow, and I remembered them that they always would tour with Discount, so I associated with them. But I always remember that you guys and Against All Authority, I just associated you guys together because I think the first real punk show, quote unquote, we played as Lane Meyer. Actually, it was Congress and Cal. That was my first band. We
Yeah, I
played,
remember them. Yeah.
yeah, it was that Butler show with you guys, Siren Six, Against All Authority, True Zero, because Alan put the show on.
Yeah, yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's before Butler got closed down because something happened after that. But that was such a cool little venue. But that was
yeah.
like I walked into it and the place is packed, and like we had never played in front of like the kids that we wanted to play in front of, and then we stayed. And I'm watching Siren Six, and I'm watching you guys Against Authority. I'm like, these are the biggest bands in the world. I was like,
in that
I
in
want
that
to
era,
have this
yeah.
happen. I want what I'm seeing to happen to me. Like what is happening right now? And that was such a significant show to like drive me to want to keep playing music and just like want to make something of it.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was so crazy. But like from that show on, I always associated you and Against All Authority together as these like just, again like that like the Buds band or whatever. Like you guys did a
yeah,
lot of stuff together.
yeah. We pretty much did a lot of stuff together, and they were great guys, man.
How did
Are
you
great
guys meet?
guys.
How did you guys meet? Because they're from Florida, right?
Yeah, so they on their first tour after their Far Out put out their record, they played ABC No Rio, and Tim from Far Out Records was the trumpet player
Okay.
in Against All Authority,
Oh yeah, that's right.
and yeah, so we played with them, and right away we were like, these guys are awesome. Same thing you did. Like these guys are awesome, like, and they're great guys. And we also like Far Out Records, like they put out like the Crumbs and
Hmm.
Bell Tones and stuff like that. So we started like bugging Tim about like putting a record on Far Out, and like he wasn't really up for it. And Danny was like, I'll do it, and like yeah. So he's like, I'll do it. I'll start a new like in my own label, and like there it was.
So was that Records of Rebellion?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then that came out, and we're like, fuck you, Tim. And like, and like,
Take that, dick.
yeah, we'll show you.
What were you guys like? How were you guys perceived at this point? Like how was or like not the word. How were you? How was like not perceived? Like what was it like?
Yeah.
What was it like your fan base like? That's the question I want to ask.
One, we were obviously suburban kids playing like punk rock, and like really we played New York, and we were wide open, like we could play anywhere there. We played all those places, you know, like C Squat, ABC No Rio, Coney Island High, you know, CB's, all those places. That was like our home spot.
Yeah.
And then like we'd play all the hall shows in New Jersey, and like we'd always feel like we didn't really fit in a way, kind of like we respected the scene, and that's actually like one of the things that like I think that cockiness and confidence like that we kind of like threw out there was because we really wanted like the North Jersey people and scene to be taken seriously, you know, and like to be able to play like those places like C Squat, like with Choking Victim and stuff like that. It's like the really suburban bands weren't really doing that, you know, it was like city bands. And like, so the perception there was like really well, we were well perceived, like, or accepted, or whatever you want to say. And like, it just seemed like wherever we went, people knew who we were. Well, we weren't like drawing crowds,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like we could play wherever we wanted at that time. It wasn't like once the 7 inches came out, and that it just seemed like we were able to like play different places, and it helped like being like friends. You know this.
Yeah.
It's help when your other bands that you like when you play the city, everybody sees you. The biggest thing about like what we saw playing New York, you could play New York, and most of the time you weren't playing to New Yorkers. You were playing from like people like from
Oh
all over the world.
yeah,
And it's
100%.
like, you know, and you kind of gain traction when you before the internet. That's the only way that you really be able to gain any traction. So like,
Well, it depended though, because see, that's the thing, because we would play in the city at Coney Island High or the Continental, and we'd show up there as just us with like another, like a kind of a local show, quote unquote, for the city, right? And
yeah,
there'd be like fucking nobody. But we never got to play a show with bands like Less Than Jake, Against All Authority. When those bands would show up, that would be the magnet to get people from Connecticut, you know,
yeah,
Jersey and all that to go there. But unless you had that main draw, you were kind of like fucked. Unless they were like
yeah.
some kid, because there was no local scene in New York City.
No, no, not at all. But everything that happened with us happened because of that. You know, like we were fortunate enough to play like bands like that probably would have benefited you guys a lot more. It was like Lagwagon
Oh wow.
and like bands like that drew crowds,
Yeah.
and we'd open just because we'd know connections, you know, to get us like on those shows. Or and we also like were able to bring people, so it was easier to like know that open band's going to bring like 15 people. That like kind of made a difference
Yeah.
in a sense, you know. And like, and that's how we got in go-kart, you know, like that was how go-kart noticed us. We opened, it was like, let me think, I think it was 98. We opened for Anti-Flag at like Coney Island High, and
Oh,
we didn't know it, but we were like, the backstage was like in the basement of that place under the stage. Yeah, so we were just down there jerking around. I remember like our drummer Tim like trying to suplex like Chris from like
Randy
from
Flag.
Anti-Flag. Yeah, like, and he like got him in the air, and he's like jerking around with him, and like go kart was there because they were like
Yeah,
in
Andy Flag was on.
negotiations with.
Yeah, they were
Well,
on
at
there.
that time they were in negotiations with like Anti-Flag. They were talking about putting like New Kind of Army, I think is the title,
Yep.
out. And like, yeah, they saw us and they were like, hey, that was it from there. Yeah, and we wouldn't let up on anything. Like, remember, like we'd ask to be played like with like Discount in like Chicago, and we just drive out there, man.
That's wild. I mean, that's it. It's just the grit. It's just doing the shit that no one else will do, and you're like, yeah, we'll drive a
That
full a day or a half day to get the fuck to that show and come back.
totally, and that's exactly the way we thought about it. Like, we're gonna do what like someone else wouldn't do because like I mean, come on, we weren't the tightest, greatest band. We were based on energy and like bringing a message and like making sure like people like had a good time. We weren't there to like rip perfect like things, like on instruments. That's wasn't what Plan A was about, but like we just that grit, that drive, that like no one's gonna stop us attitude that kind of like got us there.
What did you guys focus your songs about? Because you just said like your message. Like, did you have like a theme that you were writing about?
Yeah, like we kind of just kept it mostly political, but also there's a lot in there with like personal like strife type of thing, like situations that we're trying to figure out at the time, like talking about drive and stuff like that. Like one of the lines is like stagnation is suicide, it's like just about like doing it. And like one of the songs like it's called Battleground, which people think it was about like the pit, but really like it's about like that battle within yourself, like come on into the battleground, like you got to face those things or in order to overcome them. And that's basically like where we kept it lyrically.
Did you have certain songs that people would, when you'd show up in Atlanta with Less Than Jake, or you'd show up in Chicago and there's the discount show, or you'd go in the city or Jersey, like were there certain songs that were like the main ones that everyone in those areas like knew and they would just go nuts when they heard it?
Yeah, I mean, On the Attack is one of them, and then Jim Crow was another one that came later on, but those were the two
Yeah.
really.
So like when you were going out to these shows, like the reception, that was the word I was looking at before, like
Yeah.
received because when you were going to the city, sorry, I was getting like a phone call. Were you going to the city and all these other places? Were you finding that there was a crowd building for you? I mean, besides like you said, like in Jersey and like the hall shows, it wasn't really kind of catching on as big as you thought, or like it's not
Nah,
the same as like the city or other cities.
nah. I mean, 5 people. We played a lot of empty places. We were never like I want to like lead it on like anything. Like we played a lot of places, did a lot of miles to empty empty spaces just like everyone else
Yeah.
has, like unless we were playing with a band that had a draw, you know how it is.
Yep.
We went through the same thing. It was probably the downfall of the band, we were never able to break that barrier.
Interesting.
And that has a lot to do with like the recording aspects of it, but
So what do you mean?
the two records we put out were kind of like with Go Kart, not recorded. Like the first, let me see, the first 7-inch we recorded like in some guy's living room in like Bergen County. The second one we recorded with Creep Records with Eric,
Oh, okay.
and the same with the 10-inch was recorded by Eric at Creep. And then when Go Kart came along, the recording process just went to hell.
So explain that. What does that mean?
So like we always like to keep it going as ourselves, like so we met up. We were playing a lot of shows with that band, American Steel.
Oh, wow.
So Ryan, the second guitarist, is a recording engineer. He still like runs like Sharkbite in Oakland, from what I believe. I understand. Like we were like, yeah. So we went to Berkeley to record Go Kart. That said it was okay. Like they'll pay for it, whatever. So we went to record with him out in Berkeley. When we got there, I just remember being so sick. Like I got so sick because like we were sleeping in a walk-in freezer, man. Like we went out there. It's just a crazy story. So like we went out there to record, and we like Ryan was like, yeah, man, like I got a place for you guys to stay at the squat house if you guys are cool with that. And we were like, all right, man, that's cool. So we stayed at this squat house on Adeline in Berkeley. And I remember like we were there like 2 or 3 days, and we were recording and stuff. And some guy that like comes and bang on the door and like trying to get in, and like we were kind of like, whoa, what's going on? Like guys like, let me in. And I'm like, I can't, the door's locked. And I'm like on the inside. And like so like as soon as they left, we bailed. Like, Ryan, we can't stay there, man. Like, we don't know like who these guys are. Like they were like grown men, man. We're like gonna get the shit kicked out of us. Like, so he's like, hey, man, you could stay. He was living in like Richmond, right above like Berkeley
Okay.
at this guy's house, but the guy was like, wouldn't let anyone stay there. But he had a warehouse. And he's like, hey, he said it's okay for you guys to stay here, but you got to sleep in here. And it's a walk in freezer.
What?
So, like, yeah. So we'd sleep in this fucking walk in freezer in Richmond, fucking California. And then he'd pick us up in the morning and we drive down to the studio. And I got so sick, dude. I'm telling you, I was laying on the sofa. I couldn't even like raise my head, but like every time I had to sing or like play guitar, I would do it.
Wait. A fucking
Absolutely.
walking for if I was at a restaurant and went in the back to
Yeah.
get like dressing out of the cooler, like that kind of walk-in.
Walk in fucking freezer, man. We were sleeping in there with like, we had like bandanas around our face and stuff. Like we were like
That's insane. That's so fucking insane.
so insane. But it was, I'm telling you, dude, I was so fucking sick. And I record this and like you listen to a record, like I just feel like I'm like, you probably can't tell, but like I could tell, like it sounds like death to me,
Did,
like
wait, how long did it take to record the album?
we're out there a week.
You slept in that thing for a week.
Yeah, well, we were at the other place 3 days, so we were there
Okay.
like 4 or 5 days.
Oh my God.
A fucking walk-in freezer, dude.
What
No lie.
what was the guy who owned Go-Kart? Was that Greg?
Yeah, it's Greg.
Did you like call him up? You're like, dude, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
like spend some money on
Jesus.
this is punk rock. Everything seems like it's a fucking catastrophe, but these memories like are so intriguing to us. It's like so like we knew that we were like if we do this, it's gonna be like
Worth
something
it.
that we could look back on and be like, that was fucking crazy, or like, and we kind of part of that was like the ride. This is what it's about. This is what kept us going, man. Like the stories outside the stories is just like what made us do things.
So so like you had emailed me this that you had a bunch of stories and you said that you were like sleeping in the walk-in
Yeah,
freezer at Berkeley, and then you
yeah,
had in Sick as Fuck to our second record having been taken over by Go-Kart's ideas to turn us into a crust punk band.
yeah.
So does this transition into that, or was there any kind of like filler between these two where there's some
Well,
stories that we want to talk
yeah.
about?
So like the second record, Go Kart was like, I guess they totally weren't happy with the first one.
Okay.
So they at that time, like we actually bought nice amps. Like I had a Mesa Boogie,
Yeah.
Gibson guitar, and like every recording session from there with Go Kart was just insane. After that first recording, like we were at Big Blue Meanie in
Yeah.
Jersey City.
Yep.
So Go Kart sent us there to do like some like songs or some shit. And we were there and we were there recording. And all of a sudden, like out of nowhere, like Lars from Rancid walks in. And it's like, just walks in the studio, like just boom, walks in. And we're like, what the fuck? And he was like next door recording like a Gnostic Front. He was like help producing the record. And he heard us playing like some stiff little fingers, like Here We Are Nowhere, I think. And he just walks in and like we had good equipment at that time. Like I had a Gibson, like punk rock stuff, and like I remember him walking in being like, "Dude, you can play my guitar," and I was like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "No, man." I'm like, "I don't want to play. I don't like Les Pauls. Like I like my guitar." He's like, "No, no, no, man. Play my guitar. I'm letting you play my guitar." And I'm like, "No, man. I don't want to play your guitar." And like it's just weird like things like that. And then the second, like after we did those like session songs for like Go Kart, like they sent us a producer to produce a record. And I remember showing up, we were in Hoboken. We showed up and like I rolled in my amp and like, no, no, you're not going to use that. You're going to use this. And it was like this 1960s like weird ass amp that just like crackled when you like plugged it in. Before it
Mhm.
turned on, it was already making noise, like, and I was like, what the fuck? And the whole idea was like, Go Kart thought we should like aim toward more that like choking victim, like crust punk shit, and like I always call it shit because like that's how I felt at the time, and that it just like that's not who we were. Like we wanted to like bring like a better sound, like something we'd be proud of, not something that we wanted to like fabricate because someone's gonna like it. Like
Right.
we were like, fuck that, man. And like they ended up like recording a second record with these amps and stuff like that, and it just like just didn't do it, man. Just did it missed the mark at that point. It's just I think we were all discouraged about that. We had big hopes for that record, and it kind of just like didn't happen, didn't manifest because like label had a different idea.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think I never heard any like bad things about Greg, but it seemed like Go Kart was that label where they were known, but they never had any bands that were really taking off. Like Andy Flag did. I think that when they went from Go Kart then to Fat.
Yeah,
And they did the
that's
Looney
because he
Chicks
wasn't
and things like
paying
that.
anybody. Like
Yeah, he didn't really have a budget, I thought.
yeah, and like Anti-Flag was selling records. They were the one band that was selling records, and he wasn't giving them like royalties to it, and they're like took the record back.
Oh
Took
wow.
you know
Oh shit.
it
So
just like
yeah, go on.
yeah, no, that was it. And they would also like tell. I remember Anti-Flag telling us like they were just like they want us like the book. They wanted to get, I remember, $3,000 a show, and Greg was telling them that they should stick with 1,500 because like they'd get better response and easier, like shit like that.
Oh
They
wow.
would have held that band back big time, if they weren't smart enough and like have a sister lawyer that could like make things like difficult for labels.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that's just how they ran things. And like I remember too, like we were on tour with the Buzzcocks, and our van broke down, and their tour manager Nigel was a complete dick. And put it simply, he's a complete fucking dick right from the get go. He's a dick, and like so we were on tour with the Buzzcocks, and our van broke down. And like these shows, you had to be there at like 2 in the afternoon for like doors that were at 7. Just to like sound check and sit the fuck around. Like our van broke down and we get to Pittsburgh, and Nigel was like, we got there at like 5 o'clock, and he's like, you guys are late, you can't play.
What?
Yeah, and I was like, fuck you, man. I remember being on stage yelling at him like, fuck you, man. I'm like, we drove just as far as you did, and we did it in a fucking van that wasn't running right. We're fucking playing. And like just remember yelling at the guy, and like Greg calling us up. Like I remember like getting a cell phone handed to me. Greg wants to talk to you. He's like, you can't be like this, man. You can't be like this. If they say you're not playing, you're not playing. I'm like, fuck you, we are. And like we just like we're fucking playing, man. And like we ended up playing, but it was like that label just kind of like didn't have our backs. It was afraid to like stand up for anybody. It's like it's not that we're disrespecting like the Buzzcocks. The fucking tour manager was a dick, not the Buzzcocks. Like come on, man.
Jesus Christ.
So like that whole situation like just didn't work out, man. Just didn't work out, and I think it really like frustrated us
Yeah.
to a point of no return.
Well, it didn't sound like you guys were real. I mean, it sounds like you had it doing your own thing the whole time where it was under your control, and the moment you got on go-kart, the thing that kept you guys sane went away because now you had to deal with someone else kind of, being a partnership in the decisions, which really wasn't what built the band to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, just like any label, they want you to like uphold their standards, and don't. If the label's not the kind of label that will like stepping out of bounds a bit,
Yeah.
they're gonna have a problem. They want us to be like a crust punk band on record, but when it came down to like playing shows, they want us to be like suit and fucking tie, and it's like, come on, man, make your fucking mind up. Like, you want me to play the part? I have no problem like acting that way. Like I could be a nice guy. It could be also be like how you want me to like be the crust punk.
Yeah, I'll give you my crusty punk side.
Yeah, like come on.
Was this around? Because it says I'm on a site right now and it has "Spirit of a Soldier." Was that the first or second album on the Go
That's the
Kart?
second one. Second
Okay,
one.
so that says 2000, and
Yeah.
that's when like I always say that the 2002 2003 is where things really started to shift and kind of go in a different direction. So you guys are
Oh wait, I'm mistaken. Spirit of a Soldier was the first record.
okay. So you guys put that out in 2000.
Yeah, and then the
Okay,
second one came out 2002.
what's the second one called?
Just self-titled
Just
Plan
Plan
A
A. Okay.
project. Yeah.
So when you guys put out, and I was going to go back just like a tiny bit. When you guys put out Spirit of a Soldier, how much were you touring in between, like in the years, like in like okay, like how much were you
I know what
touring?
you mean.
Yeah, within that year, like within like 99, 2000, 2001, and things like that. Like how much were you guys touring?
I don't think we went out more than like for longer than 2 weeks. So like we'd go out and we'd do like quick runs.
Yeah.
Like we'd do like the East Coast, or we'd like go to California and do that, or like do kind of like a Midwest type tour. We never really did not once did we do a full U.S. tour. We never went out for a full run. We
Okay.
never did that.
Yeah.
And part of that is that, like Tim, our drummer at the time, was like at Rutgers, so it was like very committed to that. And the only way that he would like stay in the band is if like we made it like work around his schedule. We just do crazy drives in between, and we do like go out for like 4 days with like somebody. That's how we did it the whole time.
I think I remember the show that you guys played where you got Tim as a drummer. I remember because there was like he replaced, was it Keith? It was your first drummer?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so and then it was Tim. I always got it mixed up because so Tim came in, he was your drummer from that point until the end of the band, right?
No, so
Or what
basically
or was that something where you guys had a revolving door of drummers?
we had four drummers over the 8 years or 9 years that we were together. So
That was
like
it.
Keith was there for like only a short amount of time. I wouldn't even say a year. He was
Okay.
only there maybe like 6 or 8 months. And then came in Dennis, who was on the first. He was in the first 7 inch. He played on the second 7 inch, and then Tim came in with that.
Okay, yeah, I remember
Yeah,
Tim coming in because I remember you guys playing a show and you're like, "Oh, it's our new drummer, Tim." I don't know how the fuck I remember this. Um, but he stayed in for a while, right?
yeah. He was there until like he played on he played on the first record. Yeah, he played on the first record,
Okay.
Spirit of a Soldier.
Okay.
So he was there until like 2000.
Why'd he leave?
I think he started getting tendonitis and stuff in his arms,
Oh,
and he probably is at the end of the line too with it. He's probably like at a point of like wanting to move on to other things. He
okay.
didn't say that, but he was having problems with his wrist and stuff, and that was that.
Did you guys have any crazy tour stories besides having to sleep in a freezer for a week?
What kind of crazy tour story you want to know?
I don't know, man. I mean, doors open. I always ask this question, and I feel like I haven't gotten like anything Pennywise from Fletcher, or like kind
Uh,
of, or like I just
I
I
mean, we have a bunch. I mean, like crazy stories. Like, let me think real quick of something that might like be funny or intriguing.
it could be like crazy house party where shit just went wrong. Or one time our first tour we went on Saturday Supercade and we were driving up the street. We just got on the highway and they started just shooting bottle rockets at us in their van from like on the road. So like just random shit. I mean that stuff's like kind of like
So,
pussy, but
so I have three that are popping up
okay.
now that you said bottle rockets. So one's like a house party. One's like I wouldn't say a fist fight, but like,
Oh,
and then another one is, let me think real quick. So the one, let me tell them real quick. I'll tell a couple of them.
sure.
One is like, so, okay, so we asked to go out on tour with this band, and I'm not going to mention the band.
Oh, this is
And
definitely gonna be a good story then.
so like, it turns out like the roadie of that band was flying to Jersey to hook up with Dan, our bass player's girlfriend. and like so like we go. He agreed to go out on tour, knowing that like it happened.
Oh.
So like think we were like 2 days in, and like I remember him just being fucking miserable, which is making me miserable and everyone else miserable. I remember we were in like Baltimore, and I remember sitting in the van with him, being like, "Dude," I'm like, "go talk to the guy, straighten it out, because if you're not having fun on tour, what the fuck are we doing out here? Like, we don't need to be on tour if you're miserable. Like, well, we're in Baltimore. Let's drive home, man. We're like 2 hours from home. Go straighten it out." And he was like, he goes and talks to the guy, and he comes back, and he's like, I'm like, "What happened?" He's like, "Nah, man." He's like, "Oh," he says he didn't do anything wrong. I don't know, man. Let's just drive home. I'm like, "Wait a minute." I'm like, "Let me go talk to this guy." So I'm like, I go and get him. I'm like, "We need to take a walk." And I'm like talking to him, like, "Well, that's fucked up, dude. You know, the whole thing." I'm like, I'm like, "We're friends, man. You're like fucking around." And he's like, "Dude, I didn't do anything wrong. You know, she consented. Like, why are you coming at me?"
Oh,
Ugh.
God.
And I'm like, "Dude, I'm gonna punch you right in the fucking face right now. And like, just consider it like I didn't do anything wrong, man." He's like, "Yeah, well, you think you're a tough guy." And I just remember hitting him as hard as I could, and then like hitting a plate glass window and like falling down, and like remember walking back like to the auto bar and being like, getting in the van, and Dan being like, "What happened?" I'm like, "We're cool. Everything's even, man." It like this band like actually carried like 9 millimeters in their fucking seat and under the seat in their van and shit. So like I was like, what the fuck? Like, what are these guys gonna do when they find out?
Oh my
You know? But
God.
like, so this guy was bleeding all over. He comes back, and like everybody shook hands and we carried on. It was like all good.
So this
Just like,
dude, wait, this dude, you were on the road, and this guy took a plane to Jersey to hook up with you with Dan's girlfriend, and then flew back out to meet up with you guys? Or this happened before you guys went on tour? He like
no,
did
we went
the.
on tour before he went on tour. That happened.
Oh, okay. I
So
was saying
like,
like that's
so
pretty
like
fucking insane.
And then yeah, and then like another quick one is like we were playing with Discount in Madison, Wisconsin, and I remember I like walked down the street to go to deli or something. It was a basement show, and I come back, and like Dan and Tim are like firing Roman candles at each other in like in the parking lot. And uh, Discount was like not knowing what to do, like because at that time like they were like they didn't participate in that type of activity, you know what I mean? Like it's basically it was they were like very straight shooters, you know.
Yeah.
And like so they were like, "Oh my god," and like I remember standing there like, "What the hell? Like what's going on here?" They're like firing fireworks at each other like in the driveway of this guy's like, and there's like all these like kids around, and so the cops come up, and I used to remember seeing Tim like firing Roman candles at the police, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?" And like Discount got in the van and like tore off, and like nothing happened. The cops were like, shut everything down, and that was it. But
Jesus Christ.
yeah, it
I don't
was
know.
crazy
I don't know why
stories, man.
people get this mentality when on the road. As soon as they leave like the state limits, they're just like game fucking on. I'm just gonna go
Yeah,
complete 180 and who I am as an individual and just do random shit.
yeah. The rules only pertain to like the state you live in.
Yeah.
Like it's like.
As soon as you're out, you're like, no one knows who the fuck I am. Like I could create a whole different like identity right now.
Exactly. It's like kind of like, like, yeah, you go to another state and it's like things happen, and
Yeah.
at your home turf, you're like the referee. You're like, no, you're not doing that. You're going to get this place shut down, like calm down, like get the hell out of here,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Oh man.
so yeah, that's crazy stuff, man.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna ask a couple more questions and wrap this up. But what actually a couple before the couple questions, that's another question. Was there any like venue in Jersey that you guys or that you personally like to play?
I mean, the Wayne Firehouse is always like solid.
Yeah.
You always had good sound, and like it was always like done right. Ricky was always like on the ball. There was a lot of them, and I remember what was that other one? Westfield. That was Westfield was a
West
good.
Orange?
Is a no? I think it's Westfield. It's
What was what it looked like?
the guy from Greg, the guy who runs like R1 in Philly, does all the
Okay.
big shows at your church. Before he did that, he lived in like Westfield,
Yeah.
down by
Like right off of Route
Union.
46?
Down by
Oh, okay.
Union, he did it like shows at the church. Like they were like pretty good and solid as well. There was a lot
Don't
of
remember
them,
that
you
one.
know. It's just, but I really say that the home turf ones like North Jersey were like really done well. Like the Westwood Garage when that was up and running was like awesome.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
played there one time. It was right, we went on our last tour. It's when we had Brian in the band, Brian from Gaslight, like before he was
yeah,
like did Gaslight. So Chris had left and we got Brian and we had practiced pretty much like we practiced and started playing shows all summer long and we were gonna go on this 2 month tour around the country. And we started off, I think it was like we had either had started the tour or we were like a couple days into it, we like went to Pennsylvania and came back and played. I forget the timeline, but I have pictures from playing in the Westwood the Garage because I'd heard of it for so many years and for some reason I believe we had just never played there. So like it was like I think I think we might have been one of the last shows there.
yeah,
It
yeah,
was like 2000. It was the almost. It was the summer of 2000. It was like August of 2000
yeah.
is when
That had to
we
be
went on
at
the
the
tour.
end, like, cause yeah, I'm surprised even if it was that late. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it was for some reason this show was it was even known as being one of the last shows. I'll have to like ask Pete about that.
yeah.
But
It's definitely a cool spot,
yeah,
man.
yeah. So what was the final thing that like just ended the band?
I think we just knew. You know, it's one of those things that like we knew like Dan started playing with the ratchets and playing with guys that actually could play instruments and like I think it's just one of those things like whether I wanted to accept it or not, it was like one of those things that we just knew was the end, you know, it's just ran out of energy, man. It just like time to like try other things and like yeah, move on.
Were you like
So
kind of bummed out, or did you kind of like were you like yeah I
I
saw
was
this
totally,
coming?
man. I was totally bummed. You
Yeah.
know, like totally bummed out. But it, you know, it was for the best though. As much as like it bummed me out, it wasn't like I wasn't like, what? Why are we doing this? Like, I don't get it. You know, being like the guy in the band that like acting like the girlfriend. You know, kind of like no, it's not that kind of relationship. You know, it's like things end and it's not a romantic or relationship. You know, it's like
Well, you had so at what point? Because you had emailed me two tracks that you
yeah,
guys never released. Like, when did you record them?
yeah. So right at the end, like we were like totally obviously unhappy with go kart, and we're you know I just remember sitting there and being like, dude, let's like I wanted to do it ourselves. Go back to like what made the band. I was like, fuck these guys. Let's like record these songs. Let's do this ourselves. Like, not let's not rely on a record label. Like, let's do this ourselves. It's gonna work. So like, we recorded one, two, three, 4 or 5 tracks that we really did for ourselves. One of those things that like we were talking with that band, The Strike from Chicago,
Okay.
who were they were like had a record or two out on Victory, but they were already like broken up, and we were kind of talking about doing like a split. We were kind of kicking around different ideas about these songs, you know, whether to put them out ourselves or like do a split. So we recorded the songs, and that was it, man. It was like one of those things that we look back on, and it's we actually achieved what we hoped to do early on, but never they never got released or no one didn't see day of light. Like Dan doesn't have them, Paulie doesn't have them. Like I have a few of the tracks, and like yeah, there's one of those things that I haven't listened to in a long time, and then like when we reconnected, you and I, it kind of made me like pull this stuff up, you know? It's
Hmm.
like, oh man, like this shit still sounds good. Like, I'm glad we did this. It's something that I like look back on myself and was like, I'm glad we like archived something that was like we could be happy with the way it came out. That's why I was psyched to share it with you. I was like, yeah, check this out, man. Like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as I said to you, I was like, I think you should start a Bandcamp page. They're free and put them up there, and then you could just put it as a downloadable thing where you can put an option where people can donate what they want. And it's like $0, a dollar, $100, you know, and you could have the song up there. I'm sure people would love to hear them because they're really
Yeah.
good. They're the two songs you
Yeah.
said are really fucking good songs.
Thank you, man. Yeah, like after you mentioned that idea, like I am gonna do it. You know, like I talked to Dan, and Dan is like, it's funny. You remember the dancing guy that you brought up earlier, like
Uh,
the logo. You said our logo, like
oh yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah,
So like I mentioned Dan. I'm like, hey man, would you be down with this? Like, not that you'd say no, but I felt it was like cool to ask. You know, like,
yeah.
would you be down putting these out and like, you know, I'll create like a little like fake album cover and we'll put it on Bandcamp. He's like, yeah, man, just put that like dancing guy on there. That'll be classic.
Yeah, man, you should totally do that. Just like an updated look, or even just draw it on paper and take a picture.
Yeah, so like I'm gonna try to do that. I'm not the greatest with like uploading that stuff, but like it might reach out to you and ask for
Yeah, let me know. I have
some
one.
assistance.
Yeah, I have a. I did another band after like a couple years after Landwire, so I have a Bandcamp page, and it's definitely a lot of stuff. But I can if you do it and just give me your login, I can go in and upload it and do all that shit for you
Yeah,
if you want.
we're definitely gonna do it. I'm gonna
Yeah.
make it available for people because it's like people that
Well,
want to listen to it would be good,
so
man.
here's a fire under your ass because your interview is going to launch. Let's see, what's today's date? So on April or May 10th, your interview is going to launch.
Okay,
So
that's
that
enough
gives
time.
you, yeah, that gives you like a time crunch to get this done.
Cool.
Yeah, it's better to have like an
Yeah,
actual date to do something because then you're actually going to do it instead of like, I'll do it one of these days. It's like if you set a date, you're like, shit, now I got to make it real.
yeah, that totally. Because like now I'm gonna run to like the storage facility and like try to dig out that
Oh, nice.
logo, man, somewhere
That's
in that
awesome.
that box of shit I got there.
Oh, cool, man.
But
All right. Well,
yeah,
yeah. So, all right, I'm gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna ask two more questions before we jump off. Before we go, is there anything you want to plug that you want people to check out
well,
besides the new Plan A songs you're gonna put on Bandcamp?
yeah, the new Planet A songs and oh yeah, so Dan's still playing in the Ratchets. They just put out a record like 6 months ago on Pirates Press. So like it's called First Light. So like it's kind of rock and roll punk. Yeah, so check out the Ratchets. Uh, Paulie, our drummer at the end, is still playing in the Scandals.
Okay.
He's the drummer of Scandals, and like, so you say this is launching May 10th. So like, yeah. So I'm an artist. I create abstract art. On May 12th, if you're in Brooklyn, I have an art opening at Trestle Gallery, which is 800, I believe, Third Avenue in Sunset Park. So that's it, man.
Nice. Oh, so you're actually launching that on my 40th birthday. Nice.
Cool, man. Yeah, happy birthday.
Not to take away the spotlight from you or anything like
No.
that.
Yeah,
uh,
exactly what I thought, man.
um, all right, last question, and I'll let you go on your day and this lovely day in Brooklyn. What scene ethics do you still hold on to this day?
Pretty much that do-it-yourself attitude, definitely for sure, and definitely like that. Anything can happen as long as you go for it, man. You don't have to be like great to do something. You just got to do it. Get off your ass and do it. You know, it's easy to procrastinate. I guess those are the two things that like drive. You got to do it, man.